Next curve.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to this Next Curve Rethink podcast episode where we break down the latest tech and industry events and happenings into the insights that matter from the world of cloud, AI, and much, much more. And I'm Leonard Lee, Executive Analyst at Next Curve. And in this episode, I'm going to be joined by the illustrious, famous, and wonderful David Linthicum. And hey, how's it going?
Pretty good. I've never been called illustrious before, so
Why
I'm
not?
going to have to Google that and see if I should be mad or not, but I take it as a compliment.
Oh, come on. Come on. Are you serious?
I'm
You know what? I would say nothing but great stuff about you. But I know that you are the founder of Linthicum Research, right?
Yep.
And a lot of other stuff. But, hey, this guy is famous. I mean, he's one of the original thought leaders in cloud computing. Probably, shall I characterize you as a bit of a maverick in that regard? No?
Yeah. I was talking cloud before it was cool to talk cloud, and talking lots of stuff before it was cool to talk about it. But I was definitely go out there and pick fights. Is what I do.
Yeah. Okay, cool. This is going to be fun then. Well, you know what? We have a common background in consulting, tech consulting, digital transformation consulting. You're a former Deloitte partner, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So for 8 years, I was a chief cloud strategy officer, and built a lot of stuff, worked with a lot of people. I had a lot of fun there for a short time in my career.
Yeah. He built stuff, folks.
Built stuff.
So that's important. And you know what? We were both at E&Y at the same time.
Oh yeah, that was a long time ago.
Yeah,
that was
a long time
before
ago.
my first CTO gig. I was there for I think 6
Really?
months, and then Software AG Americas hired me away because they were taking it public, and I said, "Well, that's good. So I'm gonna go live there for a while." So I joined them as a CTO. But E&Y was a tough job to leave because it was a fun job. I was working on a variety of stuff. Working with big banks, Bankers Trust, and a bunch of stuff. I like the consulting stuff. Sometimes it comes with too much politics and overhead and things like too many rules and regulations. But it's a lot of fun if you're like me, where you're very much ADD and you want to context switch all the time. You get into different problems, solving different things. And if you don't like working in a problem domain, solve the problem and move on to something else. And that's what I did.
Yeah, you know what? You and I are very, very similar in that regard. I'm a bit like that as well. And so, okay, 6 months. That's why we didn't end up bumping into each other. But yeah, E&Y was great. I thought they had some great thought leadership in process reengineering, and that's where I kind of cut my teeth on all that stuff when I was with EY. And also, it introduced me to the .com, quote unquote .com industry. When they're all middle market companies,
Yeah. Ever since when AI came by and ruined it for the rest of the consultings come in, I thought consulting was a great jumping off point for a career. I always tell people to go, get a job in consulting because, 2 years there is going to be 5 years of experience. I don't think it's that way anymore because they're doing system morphing changes and different technology pushes, things like that. But it's a good opportunity for people who want to work hard and travel.
Yeah. And you've shared some really good perspectives on that on LinkedIn and other channels that you're pretty vocal and frequent on. And so, by the way, everyone, he is also a YouTuber with over 100,000 subscribers. And, you probably know him because he contributes to several tech publications. And I know you most prominently from your work, your contributions in InfoWorld. So anyways, wow, that was a long intro.
Thank you.
But it's really great to have you. It's probably, dare I say, kind of long overdue. I don't know.
I'm surprised we haven't been in each other's orbit for a while, based on the fact we kind of run in the same circles and do the same kind of stuff.
But that happens. Yeah. So, David, I wanted to talk to you. I have a conversation with you about two things. Number one, the state of cloud and where you think things are going, right? Because I think, especially with this whole neo cloud thingy that everyone's going bonkers about, things are changing, and it would be great to have a conversation with you about that. And then you and I were at AWS reInvent 2025, which took place about a couple of weeks ago. And I'd love to get your takes on that. I have a general idea, but it would be nice if you could share it with the Next Curve audience. And while you're doing that, I'm going to see if I can reset my brain, because I just got back from Santa Clara. I was attending the Marvell Industry Analyst Day, and my head is filled with AI infrastructure tech. So I'm going to see if I can purge that and then now focus on cloud and all this stuff that you and I were talking about 2 weeks ago. But with that, hey, your thoughts. I mean, what was 2025 about for cloud?
Well, it was everything was focused on AI and AI infrastructure, almost 80, 90%, the marketing, even the innovation that's occurring within the cloud things. I mean, we'll talk about reInvent, but reInvent was basically, it's now an AI conference that is around a particular cloud. So everything was that, and everybody started focusing on what's going to be needed for that, how to access, GPUs and, get to the infrastructure you need to build and deploy some of these AI systems out there. And no focus on the traditional stuff. So, all of my clients that I gathered over the last 15 years, they're not really running to AI yet because they can't afford it. And so they're not getting upgrades and innovation around storage. We're not seeing innovations that are coming directly from the cloud providers, and AWS is going to be included in that. Everybody is focused on the AI space, and that's getting a little bit bothersome when the enterprises aren't prepared to spend money on the space and grow in the space. As somebody told me at the reInvent conference last week, he goes, I'm not going to do AI for 4 years. I can't afford it. And I came here to get some upgrades to my storage and my compute systems and, next EC2 instances. And maybe 10% of the announcements that they made were around kind of the core infrastructure. So the people, that's going to be 90% of their business. And they're getting no love from the innovation from any of the cloud providers. So that's the big, that's the big notion. It's almost static, other than the AI pieces that they're growing like crazy. And that's a lot of taking existing tools and stuff and repositioning it as AI. There's not a lot of innovation that's going on. The Agentic stack that AWS is selling is stuff they had before and a few new things that they're just repurposing, as Agentic and, AI systems, and everybody's doing it to catch up. And I think that we're leaving the traditional enterprises behind who rely on cloud computing. They're seeing no innovation, based on what they normally see. And I think that's going to put everybody in a bad place. I think they're going to end up reducing the usage of cloud computing because they're not going to see a value to it because they're not going anywhere based on what they need.
Yeah, that's a really great observation. And it's a ground truth that, and it's an industry disconnect that is actually recognized. It's just that recognition doesn't have much of a spotlight shined on it, other than maybe some hints suggested by the MIT that MIT research paper that came out, right? That suggested that only 5% or less of enterprises that have invested in like Agentic and generative AI have seen a return. And so, the curious thing is, and the telling thing is that we don't see any of the cloud service providers who have made this sort of hard pivot toward AI deny that that's the truth, right? That in fact, adoption is much slower and insufficient to support and justify the infrastructure spend that's happening right now. And so I think you're touching on something really important that I think the industry is apparently not tuning into, especially from a marketing perspective. And the other thing that I've noticed, David, I want to get your reaction to this is, as they talk about agentic AI, it becomes increasingly apparent your cloud maturity needs to be very high, right? Because a lot of the agents are being implemented either as containers, right? Microservice-based containers or serverless functions. And these aren't just VMs, right? I mean, these are fine-grained cloud deployments and instantiations for agentic AI. And going back to your comment before, if you're not emphasizing and working with your clients to up their cloud game, right, and ride up this maturity curve, you're really not going to meet them with any degree of appetite for agentic AI. I mean, what do you think?
No, you're absolutely right. And I think that there's probably an overemphasis on agentic AI right now. And I wrote, did that in a YouTube video. I said too much, and I put a bunch of AWS people in clown suits.
Oh, no. Come on.
I know.
You got to add a few Microsoft people and Google people in there.
Well, I'll see if I can get invited to Ignite, and they'll be the next target. But the reality is there's a couple of things with agentic AI. I don't think people grasp how to deploy it. They're not mature enough, and their infrastructure is not mature enough to the point you brought up to make any kind of inroads into it. Everybody understands that it just has something to do with agents, and they're cool. They don't necessarily know how they're going to be applied. Now, I'm kind of shooting myself in the foot. I have one of the most popular agentic AI courses in the world right now, and I've had that did it 3 years ago, but at the essence of what it is, it's not going to be applicable to every problem domain. And when you do apply it, it's going to need a lot of maturity and a lot of knowledge and a lot of talent in terms of how you're going to build it.
Exactly.
You're going to, remember, you're building something that's going to be 20 times as complex based on the design patterns of it. And it's going to cost 20 times more than a traditional system. So you're going to end up wasting money if you're misusing the technology. You're going to end up wasting money if you're heading off to a failure. And the reason we're seeing so many failures right now is because people don't grasp what it takes to architect and build any of these systems. They're finding the wrong use cases. They're misapplying it. Yeah. And I think we're going to have to touch the stove for a couple of years as we go through this hype cycle to get on the other side of it, to realize how dumb we were in 2025, because I don't see a lot of productivity that's coming out of it. The other, thing I do as a job is I run around fixing projects. So projects that are failing, come in, trying to figure out what's going on and do a postmortem. And, it is a complete disconnect in terms of understanding how the technology was going to be used, missed application of the technology, and then having no technological maturity in the company, whether they have no chance of making this stuff work. They shouldn't have even tried it.
Yeah. And, typically the people who push back on let's call it a more grounded perspective are typically those who are just extraordinary developers, right? That would know how to build the scaffolding, to build the controls, to build the guardrails or institute the guardrails to make this technology safe and usable. But one of the things that I'm noticing is that number one, a lot of the agentic stuff is really starting to look a hell of a lot more like RPA.
Yeah.
One of the things that I've been telling folks lately is that a lot of these agentic frameworks and approaches serve to take agency away from the LLM. And so when we look at this whole idea of an AI revolution, you need to start from the beginning. What were the assumption sets that went into creating this narrative and the expectations associated with, generative AI revolution? And what we're finding out now, 3 years later, is that a lot of these theories and narratives have failed, right? And I think you're spot on. We will continue to find out, or the industries that are dabbling into this stuff and driving this stuff will find out how wrong they were, because a lot of the investments are driven off of FOMO. And so the important thing that I think the winners are going to have to do is discern and be ahead of, what I will simply qualify as nonsense. And there's so much out there. And by the way, this is why I think your perspective is such an important element of the AI conversation, because there needs to be more distilling forces, filters introduced into the conversation. So I just wanted to throw that in there really quickly. But I think you are spot on, and the fact that you have a lot of experience, like and continued experience, as I have in the past, fixing broken projects. I think that gives us a unique perspective versus just academic treatment of what's going on. So. Anyway.
Yeah, and it's the craziness of it right now. You hit the nail on the head with the FOMO stuff. Most people are adopting agentic-based frameworks, even generative-based AI as well, because they suspect they're being left behind by everybody else out there. We saw the same thing with cloud computing, in 2009 through 2015, and everybody was migrating to it, and probably in a willy-nilly, haphazard way. Where now we're looping back and fixing those issues. We're doing some repatriation and modernizing the various systems. Same thing, exactly the same thing, but this one is probably 5 times as worse because of the marketing dollars that are in it. I've never seen so much money being spent on marketing dollars around any of a technical space. Generative AI and agentic AI, it's just sucking all the energy out of the room. And everybody is moving forward. And I don't think they're seeing the practical advantages of it and when it should be used. We're not stopping to figure out what are our objectives here. How are we going to be helping the business? And I know that's, fuddy-duddy old, there goes old man Linthicum again with his practical perspectives. But the reality, if we don't do that, we're going to end up missing the boat on any kind of value that's going to come in. And these things are damn expensive. So you're going to blow the budget on something that's not going to help your business. And you're not going to have a lot of resources to grow your business around some other disruptor that's able to figure it out. And I think that's a fundamental issue that many of the enterprises are dealing with right now. And I think the tail is wagging the dog. We have so much marketing hype out there and so much marketing spin that's going on out there. People are just oversensitized as to what this stuff is and are marching almost like zombies toward this, AI-based framework without any kind of understanding where it's going to add value. My advice is stop. Do an assessment, create a strategy, figure out some sort of a plan to make it happen, figure out what technologies are going to work for you, what stuff's not going to work for you, what kind of infrastructure upgrades you need to make, including your cloud stuff, and just start marching in that direction. And people are refusing to do that now. They don't have the talent to make the assessment. I understand it's been expensive stuff out there, but if they don't put a plan, it's the old adage, they're going to plan to lose. And I think that we're going to see a lot of failures in 2026, 2027.
Yeah, well, you know what? I have a simple. I've been making a simple recommendation. It's and then it's a message to boards out there and executive, C-suite teams out there. Listen to your own professionals. Actually, I find that CIOs and CISOs have a pretty good perspective from a risk perspective standpoint of what are the implications and factors to consider in adopting these technologies? I mean, it's fundamental. It's just, these are just like basic filters that a CIO or a CISO are typically going to have with any technology. And to your point about, simple and basic practices being overridden, I think executive teams need to just respect their technical leadership, right? Especially the security folks who are increasingly on the leading edge of understanding what the risk profile is for adoption, right? And they're oftentimes the most disregarded. So, I think there's almost like a very available and simple way of tapping into a source of sensibility within most organizations, right? Now, what you really want to be careful about as a business leader are the evangelists, because they're typically selling you a future and setting expectations of a future that will probably never come, and if they can't answer hard questions, then they are definitely the ones that you want to disregard. I mean, talk to your CIO, talk to trusted technical leaders within your organization who have dealt with emerging technologies and hype technologies in the past, and have the frameworks of determining what to say yes to and what to say no to. Having that discipline. I appreciate your perspective on this. It's very sound and good advice.
Well, one of the things I would also say is watch the Beyond the Evangelists. I'm already not listening to those guys. They were wrong about so much stuff in the past. They have just no credibility now. And obviously they're getting paid to evangelize, but watch listening to the big consulting firms out there. I have lots of friends in consulting, things like that, but I think they're complicit in overselling and overhyping the technology because it's to their benefit. In other words, they make money from change. And as people are moving to generative AI and certainly agentic based frameworks, things like that, they're coming up with a bunch of gimmicks in terms of how to get him there, how to get there in 10 days, speed to agentic AI without understanding any of the base problems they're looking to solve. And that's not something that should come from them. So they're complicit. They're selling. They become, in essence, a sales arm for many of the technology providers.
Because
and I don't get why that should be the case. I always said they're missing an opportunity to lead thought and really kind of put a pragmatic framework around it and show people the guidance how to go through it, versus just aligning with the technology players and sponsoring a conference and then trying to sell a particular technology that's as a solution. It never was a solution. Your understanding of your existing needs and backing the appropriate technology stack into that. It's a fairly simple procedure, and we just need to figure out how that happens. And we're not getting a lot of thought leadership. We're not getting a lot of guidance, I think, from the smartest people out there in the organization, out there in the world, because I think they're compromised. They're in with the big technology providers. They figure out that's where their bread's getting buttered, and they're not going to go off script. So guys like me, I'm just one voice, and there's other voices out there, that are screaming from the highest yard arms that we're in for some mistakes coming forward if we keep on the present path. I'm a lone voice, pretty much. Maybe yourself and some other people who are saying it. And I think we're going to end up for some normalization in the market that we didn't anticipate.
Yeah. And so why don't we now pivot toward reinvent? I'd love to get your thoughts there and what your key takeaways were, what kind of stood out for you, and what didn't, maybe. Because I have a feeling we'll get a lot of the latter.
I mean, just at a 30,000 foot level, it felt to me like a company that was trying to catch up because they felt they were behind 3 or 4 years ago when the generative AI thing came up. They felt they weren't where they needed to be. And I think everybody was telling them that. So they almost overcorrected. Now it's too much about AI. It's too much about agentic-based frameworks, a lot of agent washing, what I heard last week, and not necessarily getting down to the solutions, and not how this technology can be used and worked. And that should be their focus. And it is going to be steering away their budget and their innovation away from the traditional, cloud computing technology that built them. So 90% of the revenue is coming from the traditional stuff, and it's going to be funding the innovation that's occurring on the AI space, and they're not spending time in upgrading those systems. Also, I'm not seeing a lot of innovation that's coming out of them. I wrote an InfoWorld blog 6 months ago that talked about AWS lost its innovation curve. It used to be doing serverless and container bases as a system and things like that. They're pulling a lot of stuff, a lot of rabbits out of a hat that were pretty innovative and pretty progressive in the market. And they're not doing that now. I'm just not seeing a lot of innovation. The agentic stuff and the generative AI stuff, they're just copying people. They're making their own LLM. Okay, great. We have 300 of those now. I don't need another one. They're talking about, the foundational stuff with the agentic stuff. Okay, we don't know what that means. And you got to really kind of figure out how it's going to be used. Mm-hmm. And we're missing that piece. So they're here, and they're trying to get out here. My hand's going way away. And they're not necessarily, and they're trying to act as if they're 3 or 4 years ahead in the innovation stuff. They should focus on their existing customers. They should focus on being innovative despite the AI stuff. And they should focus on creating net new stuff. They're always really good at that. People at AWS could, write a paper and submit it to their boss and get an idea off the ground, get it funded, and get a product out in 6 months. And so we're not seeing that right now. It's just a lot of agent washing their existing stuff. I wasn't very impressed with the agent core stuff that I saw. There's not a lot of new stuff that's going on there. So I was completely disappointed with the event. I was the only one. Everybody else was AWS fanboys and girls, were there for the AWS party and all the social stuff. And I went to a few of those as well. But overall, I would give them a D in progress.
Oh, wow. Wow. I mean, I would say that they've been perceived as being behind unjustifiably. I think it's just if anything, last year I thought they did a great job of focusing more on cloud, that foundation, trying to maintain that conversation around cloud. I don't know if you recall, but Matt Garman, when he got up on stage, he was leading with security and cloud. Those are the two things that are foundational to even making a first step toward enterprise AI, much less the agentic stage of stuff. I totally agree with you. Agentic, way too much of it. I don't think it really helped them. But if you were to look at the benchmarks that folks are using right now to evaluate AI leadership, I mean they're at parity with, they're on par with everyone else, right? I don't think that Microsoft is any further ahead or Google's further ahead. They're all kind of, they're all trying to meet the table stakes, right? But going back to your comment earlier, how important is that, given that is not the core of your business at the moment, right? And given that adoption is low, it's a hard sell. And so I thought it was a missed opportunity that they didn't take more time to talk about all the core stuff that you are mentioning, right? I spent a lot of time with the telco guys as well as the IoT guys, and they have some great stories there. A lot of stuff that I think could differentiate AWS in being a cloud player, because I think each of these guys are different, right? Like GCP, they have some enterprise stuff, but holistically, if you look at their business, it's the forte that they have is consumer, right? If you look at just even beyond GCP, as a company, their forte is consumer. GCP, there's a productivity bit in there. There's an enterprise, ES, PaaS bit in there. With Microsoft, their forte is enterprise, right? So they have a lot of productivity tools. They have a really tight grasp on the enterprise graph, right? That's their advantage. The way I look at AWS, they have a pretty solid footprint in industrial, right? While the others have kind of given up on, let's say, telco or IoT and some of these other business areas or sectors that are part of what you might call the industrial AI opportunity, AWS tends to have a much more mature footprint there. And I think they have a lot of good stuff going on there. And so if you were to look at what kind of impact cloud could have plus AI in industrial and operational environments, and in addressing requirements there, driving transformation there, I think they have a really good positioning there. And you didn't see a lot of that unless with the different sector groups. And I think that would have been a really powerful differentiating story for them to present, where they actually have proof points. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I do. And I think maybe that goes to you and I should run AWS. Let's get with Gorman and tell him let's get with it. It was a huge missed opportunity for them to, with all the AI hype, to take a contrarian view and then find a productive path in messaging things that I think their core people want to hear, as well as the AI people want to hear. And that means not leading with AI. If Gorman, I would have gone to the Gorman and said, listen, look, every other CEO is going to tell you how they partnered with NVIDIA and how they're doing AI, and we're going to say agentic 100 times, and I'm not going to do that. Let's focus on our core activities in terms of why we exist, and here's what we're improving around our core services. Here's an industry thing. And I would brought in, case study from an industry player. You just, they present, and then other people present, and other people present, and they just keep forming it to the fact that, okay, this is a really solid company that we can build our foundations upon anything, including AI. And by the time they get to the end of the presentation, then you can start on the AI stuff. Don't harp on it, but make sure you're supporting your existing infrastructure and supporting your existing audience. And I think that would have gone over so well, because I think all the analysts would have been respectful of that. And anybody who wants to throw a criticism that they're behind on AI, who cares? Everybody's so racing on AI. It's not going to matter.
Well, but it seems like everyone is behind on AI.
Of course, yes,
right. I mean, maybe not in AI infrastructure spend, but that's nothing to brag about, right? Hey, I'm spending the most on AI infrastructure. I mean,
the token.
You want bragging rights for that? Yeah. I mean, how are you helping customers getting? I mean, it goes back fundamentally to what how AWS and Amazon have in the past identified themselves as a customer first company, right? That's been their mantra, and if they stick to it, I think you're absolutely right. They would find themselves in a different narrative path than what they took at reInvent. And I'm going back to last year's event, which I thought was really good, by the way. They brought folks from Hartford, the chief AI officer of the Hartford. That guy is a rock star. He was present 2 years in a row. And this year he wasn't there, or at least if he was there, I missed him. And he was astonishingly good, had great perspective on what it actually takes to adopt AI. And, for AWS to continue that continuum of grounding, I thought would have been great. So we'll see what happens next year. I mean, what are your thoughts on 2026? What do you think things will end up in? What do you think we might see what would you recommend for AWS in 2026?
I think you're going to see weaker sales from AWS next year because of the fact they're not supporting their core business. So the lack of innovation is going to end up costing them some revenue that bleeds out the door. And I'm seeing lots of enterprises now, people I'm working with, that are second guessing their relationship with AWS, even though they've been with them for 15 years. So I think that weakness in the market may wake them up. In other words, if we're not seeing the uptake in AI and industry, that's going to be an industry-wide thing. It's going to take a while before people can afford it and get the expertise and the talent to make that happen. And so we're going to see a shift in focus back to the basics. I think that's going to be the core theme of reInvent 2026. And we probably shifted too much to AI, and now we're focused on the core thing. And we're going to spend instead of 70% of our releases and that are going to focus on AI, we're going to only do 30%, and we're going to focus the rest on innovation in our core field, and creating something like serverless, and creating something like container management systems, creating something they're going to be actually useful to people who are using this stuff, and upgrading their platforms and things like that. Creating the ability to optimize these systems, costs, the ability to reduce costs. All these kinds of things are what they're asking for. If they don't hear it pretty soon, they're gone. And the only reason they're not gone now is because they're very much locked into that platform. But they'll unlock and they'll move their stuff to some of the other cloud options out there, sovereign clouds, neo clouds for the AI stuff. All these other things are legitimate options now. And it wasn't 10 years ago where none of those things worked. And AWS worked. That's why people use it. Now all that stuff works. All that stuff is pretty good, and it provides a viable option. AWS needs to understand that, or they're going to find themselves behind the curve in terms of reduced sales, and they're going to have trouble innovating because they're not going to have enough money and resources to do it.
Yeah, and I would just add security and trust, because going forward, that's just going to become one of the top two.
Yeah, I agree. Right? I agree.
And again, going back to what how they led in last year, they led in with security, and I thought that was killer. And by the way, if there is this narrative change that happens in 2006, then I think you and I are going to be the biggest advocates of that pivot, right?
Yep.
What I would consider better. I thought they were thought leading last year, even though there was a perception they were behind. But I think that would be a pivot back to leading thought. And so, anyways, going back to your comment about switching between clouds. I mean, one of their big announcements was a AWS interconnect multi-cloud, right? So that optionality is opening up. But I thought a lot of the reason why they did that was because of pressures around AI data. Because one of the things that Matt frequently talks about is about how only what was it, like 10% or 15% of enterprise workloads are in the cloud. Well, so if you do the math, that means you don't have most of the enterprise data of your clients, and so in most instances, and so what I think. Yeah, thought leadership is in a completely different direction than what we've seen from all of the cloud providers, and I agree with you. 2026, whether these guys like it or not, there's going to be pressure for more grounded conversation, and I think the ones that do it first are going to be the ones who win, and they will have two advocates here, right?
Yeah. I'll definitely give an A next year if they do that. They're missing. Yeah. I mean, I understand why you don't feel like it's right to do it, because you have the whole company that's looking at you and they say, let's do AI. Let's do AI. How about AI? Going to get money for AI? Going to do AI in this market, or things like that. But I think it's going to be pivotal for them because of what their business is. And I think that in many cases, this is including some of the other companies that are out there. I include IBM and HP and Dell and some of the others in there. They're spinning way off too much into the future and trying to get ahead of themselves. And I think that's not going to work out, for the future of their technology, because the consumption and the way enterprises are going to consume their technology is very much different than the way they think. Right now, they're seeing weaknesses in the market. They're not seeing a lot of uptick based on the stuff that they're doing. So much so they're trading value back and forth and doing these multi-billion-dollar deals. Yeah. Eventually, someone's going to have to buy this stuff and put it into operations. And so if we don't have people to do that, there's not going to be a market. And I think they're aiming at the market differently. I think if they just slowed their roll a bit and focused on the basics and focused on the core customers and what they want, spending money in efficient ways, and stop the marketing madness. This stuff is crazy. Yeah. People will be attracted to that because people are attracted to contrarian thinking, when you'll find that many people are thinking the same thing. Now, you stand up in front of 10,000 people at a conference and you say, how many people think, AI is way too hyped and we're sick of hearing of it? You're going to get a standing ovation because everybody is done. They're done. They get it. It's baked in the cake. I know what generative AI does. I know what agentic AI does. I'm going to find some uses for it, but your constant hyping on it and turning everything into an agent is not helping. It's confusing the hell out of everybody. And you're spending money on stuff that's not going to have a productive end, and it's not going to help me. So I'm going to stop partnering with people who are doing that.
One thing that I thought was important and cool, and you might think this is cool too, right, is the whole technical debt thing with AWS Transform. I think that was a bright spot for me. It's focusing on the modernization challenges of your customer. That's meeting your customer where they are today. And so I thought that was a bright spot for me.
Yeah, I thought so too. I had a little different take on it because I look at technical debt, and much of the technical debt that I see is AWS workloads that were migrated 10 years ago. And people are trying to work through that stuff right now. But they're getting into the fact that people are looking for assistance in moving their stuff into something that's going to be more productive. Now, some of the Transform stuff did focus on picking up your existing stuff and pushing it into agentic based frameworks on AWS. So there was the hypey stuff. And I'm like, okay, guys, you don't know if that's going to be the case, if that's going to be helpful or not. So we're seeing the odds, the odd oversimplification around that. But it is good that they're focused on the basics, what their customers are interested in. That's what their customers are interested in right now. The customers are not interested in, and they don't have $1 billion to spend on AI. They have a certain pile of money. They have to keep the company running. They have, everything, 80% of their stuff may have gone to AWS. And now they need those guys to be innovative and creative for them so they can keep that ball rolling.
Yeah. Cool. Well, wonderful. Hey, so thank you, David. And to our Next Curve audience, make sure to reach out to David Linthicum. Obviously, he is a thought leader in all of this stuff and very vocal. He has his own mind about this, which I appreciate very, very much. And you can find David at Linthicum Research at
www.davidlinthicum.com or just hit me up on LinkedIn. Anybody can send me a message.
Yeah, and also make sure to check out his YouTube channels, right?
Yeah.
You have 2, right?
Cloud Computing Insider. I have about 250,000 subscribers out there, and just started 4 weeks ago. Dave is Not AI, and I have 50,000 subscribers.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Wonderful. Yeah.
Yeah.
So thank you so much, David. And everyone, please subscribe to our podcast, which will be featured on the Next Curve YouTube channel, and check out the audio version on Buzzsprout, or find us on your favorite podcast platform. Also, subscribe to the Next Curve Research portal at www.next-curve.com for the tech and industry insights that matter. I don't know why I'm laughing. It's probably because I have to sneeze after this whole time. Now I have to sneeze, David.
Go ahead and sneeze.
No. We'll sign off. Take care, everyone. Happy holidays, and we'll see you in 2026.